James Sweeney had he had not a great happiness for the local exhibition of Houston artists, so he stopped that exhibition. But in an exhibition of southwestern United States, it was roughly known as the Ford Foundation Show. I think it was 1963. James Sweeney chose this piece by Charles Pebworth to go on the wall. This piece by Charles Pebworth jump-started Charles Pebworth's career in Houston. It was widely praised by the critics, particularly Ann Holmes, so Charles Pebworth started showing with Booth's Gallery on West Gray and started teaching at the Museum School. He was born in 1926. He still lives in Arkansas. He went to the Art Center in Los Angeles. University of Oklahoma in Norman. He graduated at the University of Houston in 1955. His first teaching gig was at LSU and then Sam Houston State University in Huntsville. He was, as I said, George Furman in the Chronicle, and Campbell Giesling in the Post, and Holmes in the Chronicle. All were big supporters of his work. There are major bas-relief, jewel-like murals of his in the large hotel downtown, the Hyatt Hotel, which on the elevator wall. Very beautiful. Very decorative, very beautiful. Another sculptor that was particularly interesting to the Houstonians this time was Roy Fridge, a close friend of Jim Love's. Roy Fridge moved to, also like Jim Love, went to Baylor University and worked under Paul Baker. He moved to Houston in 1966. In Dallas for the Little Theater, he did the sets for Waiting for Godot. You might recall earlier on, Jim Love did sets for Waiting for Godot here at the Alley Theater somewhat earlier than that. No, it was later than that, actually. The Waiting for Godot set here says 1956 in Dallas. Jim's Waiting for Godot set here was after that, because I saw it. It must have been 65, full 10 years at least afterwards. He was guest lecturer at Rice. He worked with John O'Neill and Earl Staley and Bob Camblin. He had shows at the David Gallery. He was Jack McManaway with Jim Love and his other close friend, Dave McManaway, living in Dallas still. This piece that he showed at the David Gallery in the late 60s was a contraption. He rather liked contraptions, things that had moving parts. Some were very small toys, and others all hand-carved. Others were more elaborate, large pieces. He had a man contraption and a woman contraption. These were life-size, and for this one, the man would sit in here and with this thing between his legs, and be able to hold on to these balls, closing the door, and then someone would crank the crank here, and then these items here would move up and down. They're very sensual. I didn't decide to show the female version of this. It's even more interesting. Roy's work is, together with Jim's work, is shown here at the Moody Gallery, which I believe has his estate. Here we go with Bob Fowler, who lives here, still lives. He was he lives in Wimberley, Texas. Not well, but lives in Wimberley, Texas. James Johnson Sweeney, who was then the director of the Houston Museum of Fine Arts, got an invitation for Bob Fowler to the Venice Biennale. This sculpture won first place and became the monument to Jews who died in the concentration camps of northern Italy. I don't know where it's located. Bob Fowler taught at the Museum School. He taught at Notre Dame before he came to the Museum School. I'm not sure who his dealer was. I want to say that he maybe showed his work with the Davy Gallery, but I'm not absolutely certain about that. In 1959, I met Dorothy Hood at the New Arts Gallery, where she had a show of drawings of this nature. Dorothy Hood was born in Houston. She went to the Rhode Island School of Design, and fairly rapidly after that she moved to Mexico City. She returned to Houston in 1959 to have this exhibition, and then left to go back to Mexico City, and then returned to Houston with her husband and her belongings in 1962. There was an exhibition of these drawings at the Museum of Fine Arts in 1963, and it was about that time she became a part of a group of artists working with Meredith Long and Company, with Meredith Long. The importance of Dorothy Hood as an artist in the state of Texas cannot be overstated. Not only was she astonishingly competent in her craft and her handling of form, she brought to the table many influences that were simmering in Houston that needed to simply be addressed, and that is our cultural empathetic relationship with the land south of us. There was a tropical richness to Dorothy's surfaces and a surrealist nature to her forms that struck home here in Houston in a very significant way. I knew Dorothy quite well. We were part of that group together. And Dorothy taught for many years at the Houston Museum of Fine Arts School, died only, 10 years ago, I think, so probably in around 2000. A noble woman. I'm showing you, the only person I'm showing two works by is Dorothy Hood in this entire talk. I mean, this is an early work in Houston by Dorothy Hood. I mentioned to you this somewhat surrealist cast to the work. Her early works tended to be more thickly encrusted with paint and smaller. The later works, such as those she had in her landmark exhibition in 1970, I think it was, at the Contemporary Arts Museum, when it was before it opened on its current location on Main and Bissonnette. It had shows around town. In 1970 it was the Dorothy Hood show. I believe it was at Jones Hall at the University of St. Thomas. This is what really catapulted her into a major star. Throughout the 70s and the 80s, Dorothy was big, really big, wonderful. Somewhat related to this, and then something of the same sympathy in terms of formal relationships, is this early work by Pat Colville. At this time of doing this work, Pat was maybe not. I think she was born in 1948, so she was at least 20 years younger. Probably, yeah, I would say 20 years younger than Dorothy Hood, with a very much different kind of background. Her teacher was Robert Pruser. Pat Colville's teacher was Robert Pruser. She went to the University of Houston under the teaching of George Shackelford and Bernhard Limmel. She went to Sam Houston State University and the University of Oklahoma for her graduate work. She showed with Ben Dubose on from the early 60s on for a good number of years, I think until Ben passed away, or at least until he had sold his gallery to Stanley McDonald. She taught at the Museum of Fine Arts School, but her most important faculty stint, as far as other artists in the city are concerned, was when she joined the small faculty of the University of St. Thomas Art Department in 1968 or 69. And this was a group that included Jack Boynton, Earl Staley, Pat Colville, and sometimes Bob Camplin. This painting is 1962. Also at this time, and also showing with the Dubose Gallery, is the work of Lamar Briggs, who lived in Houston until, I would say, the late 70s, when he and his wife moved to Florida. He showed also with the Moody Gallery, and still occasionally shows with the Moody Gallery. He was a graduate of the University of Houston in 1960. Also from this particular period is this work by Roland Brenier, who only was in Houston for a period, maybe a period of 6 years maximum. He now lives in Denver, Colorado. But this work was done at this time and is owned by Henry Lillegabois. He taught in the mid-60s at the University of Houston, and I met him and knew him at this time. And then he taught at the Museum of Fine Arts School for a short while before he moved to Denver. This is a large painting. And I guess it was 1966, I was asked to be acting dean of the Museum of Fine Arts School because Lowell Collins, as I said before, had to leave. And Ruth Ewer asked me if I'd do it, so I did it. And the first job I had was to find a replacement because I was busy teaching full-time and the like. So we did find that Bill Hoey was qualified, wanted to come to Houston, and would work. I think he was dean for maybe 2 contracts. And he showed here, I believe, with the Dubose Gallery as well. Bill has since passed away actually some years ago, and I had not much luck finding too much about him. This beautiful painting of a tradition of Central Texas landscape. Also at this time, as we're moving towards the into the 60s, but towards the end of the decade, this work by Robert Weimerskirch, who was born in Luxembourg in 1923. He is still with us, and he works every day. He studied at the Académie Royale de Beaux-Arts in Brussels and the Accademia de Belle Arti in Brera in Milano. He moved to the Belgian Congo in '52, leaving it in 1960 at the time of political trouble. Then he worked in Valeurs in France with the ceramist Jean Durval, moved to Texas in '61. He taught at the University of Houston at the Museum of Fine Arts and showed with the Dubose Gallery his ceramics. And gradually he started painting wonderful paintings, and still principally does paintings. This painting, the earliest painting I could find from, I think, 1968 would be my guess. Also from 1968, the earliest painting I have been able to find by this artist, Arthur Turner. Arthur Turner is from Houston. He shows with the Moody Gallery. He went to the Cranbrook Academy of Art one more time, and returned to Houston in 1968 after spending some time in Amsterdam. And this painting is from that year, 1968. It's a large painting. Also at this time and at Rice University is the work of Charles Schorre. Charles taught drawing in the School of Architecture. It's always been hard for me to figure out exactly where the School of Architecture and the School of Art at Rice University kind of fit. I think that the School of, when the Menil collection and backing left St. Thomas University and moved to Rice University in about 1970, or just before that, or it was in the early 70s. Well, that there was they brought their art historians with them, but the Menil people didn't have any studio arts at that time, and that's why Jack Boynton was a part of this group at St. Thomas to develop a studio arts program. So I think that this would have been then in the late 60s. That then the Rice University had an art history area, which John O'Neill, who you'll see in a moment, was hired to bring in other studio artists. Charles Schorre had been attached to the School of Architecture, where he taught all the young designers and architects drawing, and he was a wonderful draftsman, one of the most creative draftsmen in the city, in a way that you could say was something of the American illustration handwriting of drawing, as opposed to academic drawing. Great variety, as you can see on the left-hand side of this painting of his friend Jim Glass, the graphic designer. Jim Glass owns this painting. With his family owns this painting. It's quite large. The play between photographic images up here, writing in here, that's just the photographic image here, which is the same image as this one over here, is interesting. The flips of this being flipped in a funny kind of a way, this being from another image here, or in a flipped in a way. He was a wonderful artist. I don't have any of his abstract work from the 60s. All of the abstract work of any significance came after the 70s had begun. There is an excellent book on the work of Charles Schorre, with essays by Jim Edwards and others. He taught at Rice University for a long time. Another artist whose work surfaced at this time and came to Houston roughly at this time was Don Edelman, who's from Bowie, Texas. He went to Washington University for his BFA, University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, worked for Cameron Iron Works as an industrial draftsman. This portrait is from the 1960s. It's a self-portrait. Then another portrait, not a self-portrait, by Otis Huband from the same period. This painting from the late 60s. Otis was I think Virginia Commonwealth University, California College of Arts and Crafts. Shows with James Nonamaker at Buttes. When Ben left Buttes, James Nonamaker kept that shop open for a while on West Gray, and then he showed with Ben Dubose and Erdon Gallery. He also went to the Academy de Belle Arts in Perugia in Italy. Very much a part of the art scene, particularly on the more established old Houstonians who traveled and saw what was going on and painted seriously is the work of Mildred Sherwood. She went to the Museum of Fine Arts School. She showed with the Houston Artists Gallery and at Meredith Long's. And she had a show at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston in 1955. This painting showing the shotgun houses with the children in front of the shotgun houses is interesting to look at in light of current trends in paintings in France and to a certain degree in New York, a kind of a shorthand of images, maybe indirectly relating to naive art, but yet extremely sophisticated. This is a very sophisticated artist. Also sophisticated artist, Margaret Dryer, whose paintings have not been studied sufficiently. She was a much better painter than people probably thought at the time. She was married to Martin Dryer. They were political liberals. Martin Dryer, I believe, was an investigative reporter for the Houston Press. That's the old newspaper of the Press, not the current one. They had their home on San Jacinto Street near the Museum District and had exhibitions in the front rooms there. This painting is from probably around 1960. Once again, it's interesting to see this in light of Mildred Sherwood painting that came just before, because of the same kind of smarts about naive drawing and painting and a very direct expression.